Chip Pickering. I'm the CEO of INCOMPAS, and today we have an industry veteran and a great leader of Fatbeam, a company that provides critical services in the Northwest, especially to all of our educational anchor institutions. So we're grateful to have Greg with us. And more importantly, we're grateful for what your company and all your employees are doing during COVID-19 to meet the challenges, to keep commitments, to keep everyone connected. And we'd love to hear your experience as a leader of what you're seeing on the ground with your network, with your customers today, as we start this series on webinar that I believe will be very helpful to all of our member companies as they listen and learn from their colleagues. And as we kind of talk through both problems, but also opportunities that will come as a result of the crisis. Greg, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I appreciate you having me on. It's we're always excited to partner with INCOMPAS, and you know, the partnership we have is a great partnership, and we appreciate you selecting us to be part of this video conference.
Well, it's good to be with you. Tell us a little bit, how's life at home? How's your family and the community, and then talk a little bit about Fatbeam and how y'all are responding.
You betcha.
In the crisis.
You bet. Yeah, I think for the most part up in the Northwest, people are pretty serious about staying at home. I think initially we were a little lax. I mean, I think we were all going to the grocery stores if nothing happened, and then we started to tighten things up, realizing the seriousness as if we didn't at first. But we certainly got. I think I'd say the first couple of weeks, you still saw people out and about. But most recently, I think people have really gotten accustomed to this. I don't think anybody's pleased with it, but I think there's a lot of soul searching that comes along, and I also think there's some good things that come out of from a family side of things, maybe talking more and things like that. But we're surviving out here in the Pacific Northwest, and we're continuing. We're essential. We are an essential business. And so as an essential business, you would gather, and you would be correct in gathering the statement or the assumption that we're out working. And so our office people, sales, engineering are all, at their homes working on sales operations, those sort of things. But our field people, they're in the field, and they're actively installing new customers as we speak. So they've been very active turning up new customers in the communities that we serve.
One thing that the nation has learned, we've all learned and grown to appreciate, is broadband connectivity really is the indispensable critical infrastructure of today and for the future. And it's hard to imagine where we'd be in this crisis without what broadband has provided. The critical link, socially, relationally, family, for businesses, for online education. Schools have been able to quickly shift online for telemedicine and telehealth, that critical link to the doctor and the hospitals to the patients as they try to care for not only COVID patients, but everyday needs of our communities. And so talk to us a little bit about your customers and what you're saying their needs are, and talk a little bit about Fatbeam, of who you serve.
You bet. You bet. No, I appreciate the segue there. We're a bit of an interesting company in the terms that we do not deliver residential service directly, but we are very involved indirectly, and we do that through a couple of ways. So number one, schools and E-rate, the school programs are very, very essential to our business model. And if you've looked at our model and our press releases, Fatbeam has built out over 40 school districts with wide area networks, fiber, and internet access. Some of those schools have taken that fiber and that connectivity and opened up, if you will, the Wi-Fi access in their schools, so that you could even be in the parking lot or whatnot to have access to that. Those people who do not. Now that's a little bit of a concern, because I think you're starting to see a real divide amongst classes of people that can afford to have broadband or that have broadband, and maybe some of them just can't have it. So there's sort of a question there whether or not they have the financial ability to have it, or they just don't have access to it. So I think that's something that we as leaders have to take on next, and we'll learn something from that. So I think we're learning a little bit now, but we'll learn a lot more later. The other components to Fatbeam that are so important is that a lot of our fiber infrastructure is fiber to the towers. There's fiber to ISPs. We're sort of the backbone, if you will, for a lot of smaller ISPs in rural markets. We deliver the internet or the upstream for them. It rides over our fiber optic network. So that's very critical. So while we do not directly provide residential, we are the backbone for a lot of people having access, whether it's wireless or whether it's a landline, if you will, in terms of their local ISP and how they're served. So, and then of course, hospitals. Hospitals are very key right now to what we're doing. I'd like to say a great shout out to all the nurses and MDs and all those people that are in the front lines, including those in the grocery stores. I mean, you take advantage of, but it's kind of, you take it for granted, if you will, but those people are working awfully hard and long hours.
Talk a little bit about your preparation. We're accustomed to having natural disasters, whether, in my region of the country, hurricanes and tornadoes and floods. We're accustomed in your area, I assume, to the different types of natural disasters, or even the forest fires that have plagued the Northwest. None of us have ever prepared for a pandemic. What were the best practices that you had in place that you think has served your company well, and what have you learned on the go as the crisis hit?
I like to tell you that we had thought it all through and we had a specific plan. I think we were just very fortunate to have some really talented people. You look at our IT team, Gavin and Zach, but a couple of those guys that are leading their IT and infrastructure. I think the diversity, that they built into our fiber networks. And I say diversity, I'm talking about diversity for paths in and out of the internet. I mean, we have multiple paths, 6, 7, 10. I'm not even sure of the number, but we have numerous paths of diversity built into our network for our customers. So in a way, we had already been providing the things that were going to be important in a situation or a world like we have right now. So I can't take credit for that, but I can give the credit to the engineering, the design, and the IT teams in our company that have done that. But I think another thing, just sort of a little aside from Fatbeam, is just what will the world look like when we're through this? I believe that there will be a change. I mean, will we all need to lease office spaces? Will work at home be thought of as a little more or a little different, a little more forward thinking? We've been forced to do these video calls. I frankly have really enjoyed them. But I kind of thinking about, and I can't think of all of the examples, but what will life look like after this little natural disaster, human disaster sort of goes on? How will it change our banking? How will it change the way we work, where we work? And I have to assume that there's a lot of companies that are in teleconferencing and other things that, they'll come out with some best practices, things that they learn that sort of make maybe the world and technology even a little more valuable to us. Chip?
I do believe that the crisis is going to lead to a transformation. And
agreed. Yeah.
The country, as we get to the other side of this, we'll see that broadband is essential, that we need to have the policies and funding in place really to have broadband for all, broadband everywhere, broadband for everyone. Because without it, schools now will not be able to connect to their student, businesses to their workforce or to their customer, hospitals to their patients. It really is, I think, going to move us much more rapidly to a universal deployment of broadband networks. And the old networks, the legacy networks, just really aren't sufficient. They don't have the speed, the capacity, the ability to meet the challenge of today and for the future.
That's a really good point, Chip. I mean, we all have talked about how much we need to fill in the gaps or challenges we have with rural broadband, and all of a sudden we're hit, like a concrete wall with this disaster we've had as a world, by the way. And I think considering where the networks are today, we've fared pretty well, but we clearly have work to do. And that's one of the things that you all help us so much with is that is at INCOMPAS, you're constantly giving us opportunities, telling us about grants in the rural areas. And that's something that we'll continue to explore. There are just some areas that are financially not reasonable to get to in terms of a return on investment. And so there is a couple of $1 billion grants coming out for rural broadband, and Encompass has helped us greatly in that. And I think we'll be pretty active player going forward. But it's clear there are some markets and some areas that, you know, we as either ISPs or telecommunications companies, whatever the definition you want to sort of put us in, I think we have a responsibility to get there. And there are some areas that just need some financial support because it doesn't make the economic sense. But boy, a time like this will certainly tell you and show you, you know, how important internet is as a utility, just like power, water, and gas. So agreed, Chip. Thank you for sharing that. Awesome.
And one of the things that I wanted to talk with you about is that as we look at congressional action to meet the needs of individuals and small businesses and the people who've been displaced from their job and workplace and all the other disruptions that have gone on, Congress is now considering maybe a 3.5 or a 4th major piece of legislation to address the needs of the country. And in one of those components of legislation, we believe that there will be significant broadband elements that will be addressed. So how do we give, you talked about people are in parking lots trying to get Wi-Fi and hotspots and school parking lots or you know, a coffee shop, or just you may be deploying hotspots and Wi-Fi. How do we meet that need immediately? And so we're looking at some E-rate funding that will help companies like yours be able to deploy and help those families that instead of in the school, they're now in the home. And how do they get what they need, the connectivity that they need? Second, we're seeing a lot of funding going to telemedicine and rural telehealth. Third, we're working with key members of Congress on both House and Senate, both sides of the aisle. How do you streamline the deployment process so that you can get faster permitting, reasonable fees, remove the barriers, things like One Touch Make Ready that Encompass and a lot of our companies worked on in the past. And I know as you deploy fiber, the streamlining of the permitting and making sure that they're not undue or unreasonable fees or franchise fees that block you or stifle your deployment is something that we're working to achieve, both now and for the future. Are those things that would be helpful to your companies?
Oh, absolutely, Chip. The help that you provide us in sort of taking those barriers out or trying to either eliminate them or come to some resolution on how companies like ours can work with together. You know, Make Ready, talking about polls, and we it was a couple of years ago, I think we worked with your guys' group and you helped us out a little bit, and we had a freeway that we needed to get fiber across. We built the school district in 18 months, or maybe even 12 to 18 months by the time we finished the school district. I believe it was in Yakima, Washington, and we had a federal freeway, you know, an interstate that we needed to build conduit underneath, and it literally took us a year to get the permit. The saddest part of that example is there was already conduit in the freeway. There was already conduit underneath the freeway in the very section. In fact, it was a bridge, in the very bridge that we wanted to attach to. So unfortunately, because our competitor did not want us in there, we had to put up another conduit, which delayed progress for education and some other activities, including cell tower fiber that we were delivering for another customer. So, you know, I think that there were days where competition, you know, the monopoly, and, you know, the Telecommunications Act of 96, but, you know, to be honest, we all know where we're going and we all have different ways of getting there. But if we can reduce the barriers, it's just not the year that it took us, it's the amount of money that we had to spend. And yet there was already a large enough conduit to support everyone there. So I would love to see barriers like that come down. So maybe we access somebody else's conduit across, in this particular case, across that freeway, and maybe in another location we provide them access to conduits that we own. So those sort of things are invaluable. And as a utility, anything we can do to help move our customers, get them installed faster, quicker, and expedite, if you will, our customers' install process. That all helps, and we all win. And we understand from the other side that if our competition wants to get in our conduit, we're welcome to let them in our conduit. We just like a reciprocal agreement. And the great news is organizations like yours are the ones that can break those barriers down and have the conversations that are kind of difficult to have at times when you're in competition with one another.
One of the things that we're seeing in Washington right now, surprisingly, is that in the crisis, there's much greater collaboration. So you're seeing in Congress votes that are 94-0 in the Senate, but we're also working with all the other industry associations, both incumbent and competitor, wired, wireless, and every group, trying to say, during this crisis, we need to reach agreement on how to fund critical priorities, how to remove barriers to deploy all of our networks, and then how do we make sure that we keep the pledge that we gave to the country and to the FCC that we would not terminate or charge late fees. And so one of the things that we're doing in the potential legislation to come is how do we keep our companies up and running during this time if their customers can't pay their bills? So we're looking at a sustainability connectivity fund that would help the smaller and regional and competitive companies make sure that they stay up and running, providing the critical services and the connectivity that are so important to the places you serve and the people you serve.
Yeah. And you can count on us at Fatbeam to continue to deliver. One of the things I think you did early on, and we maybe not talked about it so much, is that the Keeping America Connected program. I probably can spell it the proper term for me, but Keeping America Connected, isn't that a term?
Yeah, Keep America Connected. It is.
Keeping America Connected. So you guys were first and foremost leaders in that. And we have, I reached out to my peers in the industry, and, from our standpoint, we are just passionate about what we do as an organization. So we all love our customers. And I think that's what you find with companies our size, is that we're just very passionate about making sure that we deliver for them. And so we had no issue. We inked with you folks as soon as we could, because, we probably realize we don't have enough data right now to see, but hey, the hospitality industry in the inland Northwest with golfing and lakes and, hotels, that's in a tough situation right now. So we have not seen the ramifications of what we might expect. We have some sense of it. We've done a little bit of homework on it. But, we certainly are not going to disconnect or charge late fees for any of those customers. They've got their hands full, just like a lot of small businesses. And our hearts go out to them, because we get it. Having been there and run a number of companies myself, it's hard. This is something that no one's ever planned for. So we just want to thank you for allowing us to be part of the Keep America Connection, or a fund, or Keep an America Connected plan. But we're very much there to jump in, as soon as you guys got that in place. So thank you.
Well, Greg, I really appreciate you being with us today. And I like Einstein looking down on us, making us hopefully better and smarter as we try to serve the country and the communities, the places where you are. And we want to thank your employees for keeping the networks up and running in that part of the country. So thank you. Thank you for all the work and the leadership you've given to Encompass, being on the board, coming to Washington, being a good advocate. And we look forward to continuing to work with you. And now during the challenge that we face with the pandemic, but also to build the future. And we look forward to that. So thank you.
Thank you. Of course, thank you. And a shout out to our great employees. We've got some special people that work for us at Fatbeam, and they're as passionate as I am. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for allowing us to be part of this cast and podcast. And anything we can do in support of Encompass, we'll continue to do it, because it takes a team. Take care. Thank you, Chip.
Thank you, Greg. Take care.